Welcome to this BuzzEasy and VFC Contact Center as a Solution demo, or better known as a CCAS system. So we'll be going through a few things today. First thing to do, though, is to introduce myself. My name's Andrew Bremner. I'm the pre-sales consultant for BuzzEasy and VFC, so I deal with the global markets. My other title is a solutions architect, so I have about 25 years experience in the contact center and CX space. Let's discount the first 5 years because that was spent as a graduate to getting to my first senior position. So I've got about 20 years senior consultancy experience within the industry. About half of that, and this is where I'm quite lucky, has been as a CX applications manager and end user of these products, CX application, CCAS products, etc. And the other half of the career has been roles like this as a pre-sales consultant, selling to multiple end users. So what are we talking about today? So we're talking about unlocking the full potential of supervisor and coaching technology. So we've got two competing sets of technology. We've got the old school technology, which is quite mature. It's been around since the 1990s. It's all based on the technology of its day, which means it's designed around working on site. So it's all pre-pandemic stuff, practices and processes and technology platforms we used to use when we all worked in the office. It's quite labor intensive. It can be disruptive for agents, and it can affect the overall handling times and wrap-up times. However, the new contact center and cloud-based technologies we've got now is based on the infrastructures of today. So fiber broadband, people working hybrid remotely. You can have supervisors and agents on different sides of the planet, on different continents. There's a reduced workload for both supervisors and agents, and crucially, it doesn't disrupt agents' workflow. It only enhances it. So I've got 4 use cases that I want to go through today. I've got a couple of slides on each one, but we will be interjecting with live demonstrations of the features within our products of BuzzEasy and VFC. So the first one, who remembers when this was the pinnacle of contact center technology when it came to coaching and listening in? Basically a Y-shaped cable. You've probably got some of these knocking around the office now. I'm sure that you've panicked when you've lost a few, or you may have spent a week or two sitting next to new starters, plugged into their phone listening. Great technology of its day, still is available now. There's USB versions, etc., where you can rock up to an agent's desk and you can listen into their calls, you can coach them, but it's designed around being on-site only. It's disruptive to the agent. They know that you're there. They know that you're listening. Sometimes you've got to unplug their headset and plug your Y-shaped cable back in. There's always the risk of the customer overhearing you. You've muted your microphone, you've put your hand over your microphone, but they may overhear you on the agent's microphone. And you're constantly losing that key bit of technology, that special cable. So on the right-hand side of the technology that we've got now is based on the cloud. The agents and the supervisors can be working anywhere, even different continents. So you could have a set of supervisors in the US or Europe that are listening in, monitoring and barging in on calls that are maybe coming from a contact center in the Philippines. You know, there is no bounds or geographic bounds to this. It's not disruptive to the agents. Agents can ask you to join a call. You can push yourself into a call. There's no cables or hardware to deal with. There's no chance of the customer hearing your barge in unless you want them to. And finally, there's no special cable required. So, quick introduction. Let's have a practical demo. So, in my demo system, I've got an agent who's working, and I'm going to log in as a supervisor. So as you'd expect with most contact center systems, similar to BuzzEasy, we have a number of real-time reports. We have a bots report that's listing all of the self-service interactions, the IVR interactions that customers are having. We had a set of queue reports, of course, where you can see what your abandonment rate is. You can drill into the ACD and see who's talking to who. You can see who's waiting, who's completed their calls, etc. You can set your SLAs. But what we're really here for is the teams report. So this is where you'll get a dashboard of all your agents, all of your teams, and you'll get agent cards. So this is where you can see what the agents are doing, but more crucially, again, the replacement for this cable is it's just a simple click. Now, there's a number of ways that an agent could have asked you to join a call, or it may just be that you're monitoring. You're saying this call has gone over 20 minutes. I might need to listen into it. Or the agent's pressed the button for call help, or they've messaged you on Teams, or some way that they've asked for you to interrupt. It could also be that you're in the office and you still are working the old floor walking processes, but you're not going up to their desk. You're sitting at your own desk, and with a simple click, I am going to join that call. So now I'm silently listening in. We can disable this if your jurisdiction or your local employment laws don't allow silent listening, so that the agent is immediately made aware that you are listening in. So anything I say to the agent now is a third voice in their headset. The customer can absolutely not hear what I'm saying. This is monitoring. So now if I go to whisper mode, this is the mode here where only the agent can hear me. The customer again cannot hear, but if there's a point where you think you need to interject into the call, it's what we call barge in, you just go to the final mode, and now basically you've pushed yourself into a three-way conference, just like you could have sat at the desk with this cable, but again, that's one at a time and you need to be on premise. As a nice added bonus to this type of feature, you can also do some real-time evaluation forms. Now, this is an early view of these evaluation forms. These are something that should be built into most systems now, where you can create your form and you can score the call live, or you can score it against call recording. But you'll see that we've got a better use case for this in the future. So I'll just disconnect from that call and leave the agent talking to the customer. Just as a little bonus, you'll see that we can also not only just do this with voice calls. In BuzzEasy, you can also do it with digital chat calls as well, and social media direct messaging. Again, I can silently monitor the conversation that the customer is having with our agent. In this case, we'll color code it to see that the customer has arrived at a chat, and all of these green bits here are where the self-service bot is asking questions. And at some point in this conversation, this automatic chatbot has escalated to an agent. So the agent has asked a question and then in the middle of a conversation. And again, here you can say, "Hi, do you need help?" which is a direct whisper message to the agent only. It'll come up in their chat timeline with the supervisor offering help. But again, if you want to barge in, you can say, "Hi, I am the manager." So again, it's the same monitor, whisper, barge, but this time it's with a chat channel. So I'll just disconnect from that one. So that's how our cloud-centric technology can really revolutionize the way that you do your coaching, your mentoring, and your quality management of your contact center. So back to my presentation. So the next use case is all about quality scoring and quality management. So on the left, as I've already shown you, you can obviously have evaluation forms. Now, most systems, including VFC, our call recording platform, VFC stands for Verint Financial Compliance, by the way, and it's a full enterprise recording platform, but with many AI plugins. So this is the first part where I'll also showing some of our really useful AI plugins. But on the left-hand side, what we have is the technology of today and the past. Hopefully you've had access to these for at least the last decade, is where you create your own evaluation form. You give it values and scores based on your company profile and on your company values. And then you get the supervisors to do random samples, to listen to the call recordings, to score them, give a percentage review. An email will be sent out to the agent giving them their review. You can pick out bad and good calls. But one of the key things about it is it's very labor intensive. You know, the supervisor needs to sit down. If it's a 10-minute call, they've got to listen for 10 minutes. They've got to score it. They could be dealing with hundreds of calls, which means that they can only have a random sample. At best, you might only be able to listen to 10% of calls and score them. And the other key issue with it is it's subjective. Different managers will score differently. We all hope there's no favoritism within a contact center or any team dynamics, but it's inevitable. We're all human. People are going to score differently. And when there's a replacement manager, an agent may get a different score for what they perceive to be exactly the same conversation, the same great customer service they always get. The final point is that it can miss subtle and key performance non-compliance triggers. Of course, you can't listen to every call, but when you listen to calls, there's some things that could be overlooked. So the technology of today, this is where we can use batch-based AI transcription and sentiment analysis. It's a plugin that we call Intelligent Voice, or IV for short. So on the right-hand side, you basically change your business processes. It does require a little bit of a culture change. You do need to go from random sampling and forms-based and values-based to query-based. So you can decide what the criteria are. What do I want to look for? But at the same time, you can also change that criteria on a whim, just like which you can't do when you're talking about forms based. If you want to add a new question or new scoring criteria, it affects all the criteria you've had before. So the type of things you can search for is look for all conversations where there is language switching. I mean, if you work in financial services, especially in an audited area, platform trading, etc., shares trading, stock trading, they're very heavily audited. And one of the key indicators is if the trading agents switch language in the middle of, say, a 10-minute discussion or negotiation call, they switch to a different language and then back to their standard language again, that's an absolute flag that the auditors would want to find. And you'd want to be able to search for all of those calls where there was language switching, if it was relevant to your industry. But you can't just search for, what the languages were, the content of them, what were keywords, etc. But you can also search through the sentiment gradient. Is one of the key things that you would want for customer services is give me all examples of calls that started off with a positive sentiment, but the gradient slowly went down and they ended negative. They are calls that you'd want to listen to for customer services, avoid complaints, etc. On the flip side, if you're looking for very good examples of calls where an agent has done fantastic work, what about searching for calls where the customer started off negative? The whole tone of the conversation, not just what was said, but how it was said, was negative, and then ended positive. So again, they're ones that you would miss on your random sampling. It may be that you just caught all the negative gradient ones when you were sampling in a particular agent, and you missed out some of their positives. So the absolute top line to this new technology is you transcribe and analyze every call. There's no longer any kind of random sampling. You're doing every single call. The second bit is it's absolutely objective, is once you've trained the AI model, is nobody will be treated differently. It's completely inclusive. Everyone will get the same score done by the machine. However, the reaction to those analysis scores are done by a human. So the queries, etc., that you'll be doing will be done by a human. So let's see this in reality. So again, let's just have a quick walkthrough of it. I will just go to my desktop. So this is the login for VFC. Single sign-ons, as you expect. There was a lot to this product. I could spend quite a lot of time going through all of these additional features, compliance, quality management, workflows, ethical wall, etc. But what we're really here for is the bit that I'm talking about, and this is quality assurance. So as you'd expect, you could search for all the metadata of all calls, but you can also search for, as I showed you in the screenshots, things like keywords. As you can see, I've put in the word mortgage here. You can search through different things that are recorded, Teams instant messaging, voice, transcripts, etc. This is where you can search for the languages and say, search for language switching. This is where you can look for your positive and negative gradient, and also something called TCUs, which is a linguistic constructs of basically sentences in verbal form. I say a sentence, somebody responds in a sentence, or in this case, in my monologue, I'm saying multiple sentences. Therefore, multiple TCUs, turn construct units. So you can say, give me everything, all the calls that had, say, between 10 and 20 positives, or 10 and 20 negatives. So you can construct basically your own criteria for the calls that you want to listen to in more detail. But in this particular instance, I am going to search for everything over the last year that had the word mortgage in it, because that's a particular thing I want to look at. And then we can pick out one of these calls here and play it back. So you'll quickly see here that you have a view of the agent's desktop. I'll be going to this in more detail soon. But for the time being, what we want to look at is a more detailed look at the analytics. So in the first instance, you could just use this in summary reporting. By agent, give me everything where they had a positive gradient, is that they had a negative or a neutral call that ended in a positive manner, or give me all of the calls on this particular agent, this team, this cohort, however you want to construct the reporting data, everything where it was overall positive. You can also say, give me everything where this particular language was used, these particular keywords were used. So again, you can pull this into your reporting data. But what I've done is I've drilled right down to the individual detail here. So what you can see is this call recording is playing back, and hopefully you can see a karaoke style. at the bottom, which is playing through and highlighting all the words as they're said. What I have is the predominant language as well. So again, this was end-to-end English 001, which is British English. And you can even get down to regional dialects. You can see that, well, there was quite a few very negatives on this call. And from these red marks down the side, you can see it's mainly speaker one. Speaker one is not particularly happy at the beginning of the call, but luckily you can see that the greens for speaker one are increasing by the end of the call. Further down as well, another bit of AI can pick out a list of topics. These are not necessarily words or phrases that were said during the call, but based on your database of topics and the values that you may have, it'll pick up topics within the conversation as well. Also, crucially on the search, you can tell it to search for phrases that weren't said, which is always one of the key performance indicators on the manual-based forms, is that make sure that the agent had a proper greeting. Well, you can search for all the calls where there wasn't a proper greeting, that were negative. So basically, you can change all of your scoring criteria on the fly. Then finally, for this piece of technology is all calls will be summarized into 200 words or less. So I don't know anyone on the call if they've actually been reading the text of this particular transcript. If anyone spotted it, it was me and a colleague discussing a small section of the script from the film The Big Short. So we spoke about the section where Michael Burry is speaking to a trader and he wants to short the US mortgage market. So I'll just quickly read out the summary and see what you think for this short section of the film. The Wall Street and the audience were discussing the housing market. They were trying to short the market by betting against the mortgage bonds. They discussed the market, the banks, and popular culture, but they agreed they were wrong. They argued that the bonds were too stable and bonds should not be shorted. But they also argued that they should short the mortgage market by placing a credit default swap on the bonds. So that's a summary from a movie script. I thought it was quite impressive in how it summarized it. It is about a 15-minute conversation. So hopefully it'll be useful for your business as well. So let's go back to my presentation. So the next thing is, wouldn't you love to see what's happening on the agent's desktop, not just listening in remotely or in presence? So the old technology really used to be a human solution. So I've got a picture here, I've managed to grab it from Shutterstock, of a manager basically standing behind an agent and looking at their screen. So this solution to this problem basically requires physical presence at the agent's location. You can only see what the agents are doing now, often disruptive to agents. No one likes being watched. I know, and a lot of people like me, is if anyone's looking over me, I literally lose the ability to type because I do a lot of spelling mistakes as well when I'm trying to type on these demos as well. So everyone knows what it's like to be watched. Another thing is agents can also work very, very fast. If an agent needs some help, especially a veteran or an agent that's been doing it for a long time, they need help with a complex CRM, a housing or a financial system, or SAP, for example, they can open and close those screens so fast that it can be missed, and you have to get them to slow down. I know it's a problem I've had when I've been CX Applications Manager. And the other thing is, you can only capture what you can see now. You can only help them what's there now. So on the right-hand side, what we have is the technology now. And you probably saw it earlier on when I was showing you my last use case, which was the analysis, is that we can also record the agent's desktop. We can record up to 4 screens, and we can also do live sharing. So unlike something like TeamViewer, where the agent would have to allow you, invite you in, you can basically just push your way in and view the screen. But what I really want to talk about is the benefits of actually doing desktop screen recording at the same time as a phone call is going on. Now, we can record up to 4 screens simultaneously. Even if agents are working remotely, what it'll do is it'll cache the image and wait for a free spot on their broadband so that it can upload the images later when it needs to be. So it's not going to affect call quality, even if you are recording all 4 screens. So one of the key benefits of this is the playback can be paused and reviewed. So you can watch it frame by frame. It's not disruptive to agents. You're not hanging over their shoulder. They're not having to put their hand up so that you can come and see what's going on their screen. And it really is a game changer when it comes to support and also desktop IT support as well. When I've been working as a service provider at a company and I've been responsible for service desk, I know the problems of doing service desk support and IT support for a contact center is the agents really don't have much time to raise support tickets or engage with IT. They're incentivized to be on the phone, to be on chat, answering emails as much as possible, and they're disincentivized from basically doing any kind of desktop management. So when a training issue or an IT support issue or an error message or an update or any of the things that we're bombarded with on modern desktops come up, the conversation nearly always goes the same way as they raise an IT ticket and say, this happened, a message came up, the call dropped, I had some quality issues, and it ends up into a war of chasing information is that the IT support will say, what was the error message? Agent obviously doesn't know. They clicked off it and they went to the next call, and they only message you an email during the break. Okay, so IT will say the next time it comes up, send me a screenshot, give me a message. And then what happens on the IT service desk, you had a load of tickets. Some of them are training, some of them are simple queries, how do I do this? And some of them are genuine error messages. And they just pile up waiting for the agent the next time they've got the opportunity to tell you what happened. You can turn that entire process, which is quite labor intensive, into just a question about, okay, no problem, when did it happen? And then go and retrieve the recordings. So what I've got is a video that I created from the system earlier. This has been captured by VFC, and I'll just talk through as it goes. So the agent starts a call. They pick it up on our contact center system. Don't need to know too much about our contact center system. Probably looks very similar to one you've got. It's got an inline soft phone. It's got a built-in CRM. And hopefully what you'll see on the screen is a big yellow dot that's moving around. That's the agent's cursor. And when they click, you'll see it flash red. So at the moment, the customer and the agent are having a conversation about their contact history. And at this point, you can see the agent's picked up a chat that the customer's had. They're just going to read through that chat, and then they're going to go to the CRM and check their contact details. And then they're going to have a look. All right, let's have a look at the scheduled call. Now, on this particular issue here, the agent reported or raised a service desk ticket that they put the customer on hold and they couldn't take them off hold. So what you've just noticed there is a colleague has messaged the agent and said, hi, you want to grab a coffee? So the agent's still on the call. We're looking at this. So why could have that happened? Why could the agent not take the customer off hold? So the agent has just responded to their colleague saying, yeah, I'll just finish this call. They're still talking to the customer now. And they said to the customer, I just need to put you on hold. And they've done that there. So you don't need to have the same ITIs as me, but what I spotted, and any service desk agent would also notice this as well, is that the agent got distracted while they were on the call, and they used their soft phone, the Teams soft phone, to put the customer on hold and not their contact center solution. Now, the reason I've used that particular use case is because that one that is very, very common, I would say, for the last 10 or so years, especially with systems that were based on IT VoIP phones. There was a soft phone system, and then there was the contact center system. Both of them had mute and hold buttons, especially with Link for Business and Skype for Business. And we would always have, with new starters, they would start putting calls on hold with the soft phone system. Now, there is a good, even more modern solution around that, and that's moved to a full WebRTC interface. So there is only one telephone, and it's based in the browser. But with this kind of desktop recording technology, you can immediately eliminate those kind of background issues out of your business, along with a lot of other use cases. They may be training issues, they may be patching issues that are popping up, error messages. If you're managing a large estate of 400, 500 plus agents, they all have a desktop, or even if you're on like something thin client, a Citrix, then this can completely change the conversation around training. How do I do this? This error happened, to instead of asking lots of details and asking the agent to provide evidence, it's just a case of when did it happen? In the last hour? Was it yesterday? And you go through the call recordings. The other issue as well that I've got on here is where the agents can move so fast, you can quite often miss it. Well, obviously with a pre-recorded video, you can slow it down. You can capture things that, okay, the error message only came up for a second. They clicked OK. No one could have read it, but I can now free frame and bring it up. So like I say, completely a game changer when it comes to IT support, training, and getting rid of those niggly issues that reduce your average handling time, increase your average handling time and increase your wrap-up time. There is one little interjection I want to put in here is, you see I've got a few images on here and I've been using Shutterstock, but because I've been presenting some sort of AI solutions on this particular webinar, I also wanted to have a bit of fun and use AI to generate my images. But I had a bit of fun with that in the fact that this was the first image it came up with a prompt. Not bad, but not as good as the Shutterstock one. Second attempt, as per usual, but a bit of issue with hands and fingers there. Third attempt, well, this is the point I gave up. So I did go to an image generation site and I typed in a prompt saying, 2 agents, one on the phone, the other one observing. And I'm afraid the results probably are going to keep me awake at night, but I just thought that was just to show that our AI overlords are not going to be taking over anytime soon, and I hope I haven't caused any nightmares. But on to my next and final use case. So this next one is all about training artificial intelligence and getting it to be an effective FAQ and self-service bot for your customers. So essentially, stock and ideas, what to put into your knowledge base. So chatbots and self-service FAQ chatbots where you can ask simple questions are ubiquitous now. They're on most websites. A lot of people are using them. They're not a brand new technology. They've been based on machine learning probably since the early 2000s. You know, I saw them around 2008 and onwards. And what normally happens is a business will invest in programming an FAQ. With later versions, you'll dump SharePoint in or your FAQ document that may have been on a website into a chatbot, and it'll create an internal database. Then customers will come along and start a chat. They might send an email. They might come through social media direct messaging. However, they're basically talking to an FAQ bot. And then there'll always be a series of questions the bot can't answer. So we're not talking about generative AI here. We're talking about FAQs. So the bot can't answer, it'll say, sorry, I can't answer that, and then it'll offer to escalate to an agent. It's pretty standard technology that's in BuzzEasy. It also exists in other platforms as well. In that case, what it would do is it would generate vast amounts of data for unanswered questions, all with various variations of the same question asked with different spelling mistakes, different nuances of languages, etc. I mean, in English, how many different ways can you ask, what are your opening hours? When do you close? Are you closed today? Are you shut yet? Lots of different ways a customer could ask, are you open? So someone who was managing this database and wanted to improve it would want it to learn over time. There's 2 options you could do is, well, you could replace your FAQ bot with a large language model, you know, an OpenAI, a Llama, or a Genesis generative AI. But then you've got the opposite problem is they never have nothing to say. In fact, what they have sometimes is too much to say. You open yourself up to risk of AI hallucination and prompt injection. And I personally, working in the AI industry, I do kind of raise an eyebrow every time I see a news story about a particular bot that went rogue. It swore at customers, it wrote haikus, it talked like a pirate, because customers messed with it. So in this particular technology, what we're saying is stick to the FAQ bot. It can only answer from its own learning database. However, that problem doesn't go away. Is the person looking after this, the supervisor administrator looking after this, is going to have a lot of data on unanswered questions. So if you look down through this list, you'll see that there's kind of a theme on this particular one where customers are asking to extend their credit, although there's multiple different ways they've typed that in. And there's also a lot of spurious data where the customer has clearly just mashed the keyboard because they're trying to overwhelm the FAQ bot and get through to an agent. So this is a lot of work. This is a very small sample. If you are dealing with a large corporate website, this is going to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions, to go through and say, what should we add to our database and what shouldn't we add to our database? So on the right-hand side, what we've got is we believe this is a best of both worlds solution. Is you can protect your business's reputation by only allowing customers to engage with a FAQ tried and trusted bot that can only answer from its own database. It's not going to hallucinate. It's not going to break out of its programming. It can't be hacked by prompt injections. But at the same time, we use a large language model, a generative AI in the background, to analyze 2 large sets of data. One of those sets of data is the list on the left-hand side, which is what our customers asking that the bot didn't know, what was not in the database. And the other source of data is the conversations here where an agent has engaged with a customer. Customer's been escalated to the agent because the bot couldn't answer, and one or many agents have dealt with that in a highly professional manner, and they've already got the correct words and phrases for dealing with that particular query. That means you use the power of large language models to come up with suggestions to a human supervisor. So essentially what you've got is human moderated auto learning. Is the large language model will look at the unanswered questions, it will match it to when the agents answered that question, it'll give a suggestion to a human moderator. The human moderator can say, I want my top 10, I want my top 100, I want to do this process once a week, once a day, once a month, they choose, and then they approve, accept, or reject, or modify the suggestions made by the bot. So let's have a look at this for real. So this is our BuzzEasy admin portal, and I've got it on our Q&A suggestions, which is what we call this particular technology. So you can set it to say what my top 10 are, and as per usual, programmers have put in a nice round number. And these are the top 4 questions that customers have asked that isn't currently in our FAQ database. So as a supervisor, I can say, okay, so we've had a lot of customers saying, how can I turn my Wi-Fi off? It's looked at the conversations here, and it will tell it which conversations I've been looking at. These are the conversations where an agent has actually answered this for real. They've answered it in a live environment. And then what the supervisor can say is, okay, I accept that answer, approve, in which case I'll add it to the FAQ database. So the FAQ database is now learned. All of questions of this nature will be answered with this corporate response. They can look through everything that's been approved. So they can say, historically, these are all of the ones that we added to the database via our Q&A suggestions, including the conversations and the agents that we can track back to basically the contributors. The contributors don't need to know they're contributors. Again, this is AI that's taking that responsibility and also that time lag away from the agents. They don't need to add to this. But if you want to, as a supervisor, you can say, you know what, the AI picked up your answer last week and it's now gone into the database. But also crucially, you can list the ones that you've rejected. So this is a nice example I have here is you are going to get customers that as soon as they see a bot, they've got to a chat bot, they're instantly going to say, speak to human, speak to agent. Can I speak to the manager? So these are ones that if you allowed unmoderated self-learning, these are the kind of questions that would automatically get into the database because the bot, not knowing your business, is going to say, okay, every time somebody says, can I speak to a manager, let's get an answer for that. In this case, they can say, no, I don't want that to go into the database. Stop suggesting it. Every time somebody wants to speak to a manager, or there's a complaint, or there's a product issue, or there's keywords like safety, governance, ombudsman, then don't add that automatically to the FAQ. So again, back to the phrase of human moderated self-learning. And again, you can have the historic conversations that led to this particular decision for why this didn't go or why this didn't go into the database.